Obviously, there's a lot of audio boards that you can choose from. Some people are wondering, do I need a $125 audio board or do I need a $380 audio board? In this video, I'm going to compare a Behringer audio board to a Soundcraft audio board. And after watching this from start to finish, you should be able to make a more informed decision when purchasing your audio board. The first thing you'll probably notice is that the Soundcraft audio board has the larger 100 millimeter faders. The Behringer has the smaller 60 millimeter faders. Usually the 100 millimeter faders are more desirable and you pay a little bit more for those, but the 60 millimeter faders will work just fine. The Soundcraft audio board has direct out for the first 8 channels. That's a very handy feature to have on an audio board. You're going to pay extra money for that. If you look, you can see where it says direct out. You can do pre-fader and post-fader. It's best to leave it in the pre-fade level because that way you can set your audio levels. If you're going to like an M audio interface or Mark of the Unicorn, once you get your audio level set, no matter how many times you raise and lower the fader, the audio level going into your audio interface into the computer will not change at all. Where if it's in the post position, as you raise and lower those faders, it will affect the volume level going into your audio interface. So if you're doing a live sound recording and you set the levels where you want them, like at Unity, 0 dBs, a lot of people do it at minus 6 dBs nowadays because everything's digital. Once you get that level set, you might want to bring down the guitar player for some songs, bring up the keyboard player for some songs, lower the bass player for certain songs. That's for the live, performance of it. But once you get back to the studio, if they all have a good clean signal at a decent level, you can rearrange those however you want. You could actually omit, the rhythm guitar maybe and bring up the piano more, or bring up the saxophone more and lower the bass. So that's why that's a really handy feature to have. It's also handy to have, in the recording studio as well. Another big difference between these two audio boards is the auxiliary section. On the Behringer, the auxiliary section taps into the onboard digital sound processor. I would never buy an audio board based on the onboard digital sound processor, but it does offer reverb, detune, and pitch shift, so you could disguise your voice, or if you're doing a podcast and you need to disguise the voice of your guest, this audio board will do it. It might be a feature or function that you might want to have. I would prefer not to have an onboard digital sound processor myself, but if it's a feature that you think you might need, it would save you probably $180, maybe $280 from going out and buying a separate digital sound processor. As a lot of you folks can tell, the auxiliary section in the Soundcraft audio board is a lot different than the Behringer. The auxiliary section in the Soundcraft audio board is external. It gives you a lot more functionality than what the Behringer audio board can offer. As you folks can see, each auxiliary channel has a separate output. This can be very useful when doing live sound reinforcement for bands or when you're doing recordings in a professional recording studio. I'm going to demonstrate now how the auxiliary section of the Soundcraft audio board can be useful for live sound reinforcement as well as in the recording studio. If the vocalist is in channel 1 and the guitar player is in channel 2 and the bass player is in channel 3, we can then later use the auxiliary channels to monitor their sound when they're live on stage. I don't know if a lot of people know that when you see somebody like Ozzy Osbourne in concert, he has a speaker right in front of him so he can kind of monitor the sound. Randy Rhoads, his guitar player, or Zakk Wylde nowadays would also have a speaker so they can kind of monitor their sound as well. As you can tell from the diagram, the monitor for the vocalist would be on auxiliary channel 1, the monitor for the guitar player would be on auxiliary channel 2, and the stage monitor for the bass player would be on auxiliary channel 3. For example, if the vocalist said, "Hey, my vocals are coming in too loud, could you lower them please?" All you would do is take the auxiliary knob that I have highlighted and turn it to the left a notch or two. If the vocalist said, "Hey, the bass player isn't quite loud enough, could you raise their volume slightly?" All you would do is take the auxiliary knob I now have highlighted and turn that to the right a notch or two. It's that simple. The same exact technique can be used if the musicians are in isolated sound booths wearing headphones. For example, if the guitar player said, "My guitar's coming in a little too loud, could you lower the volume, please?" All you would do is take the auxiliary knob I have highlighted right now and turn it to the left. If the guitarist later said, "Hey, the bass is a little bit too loud as well, could you lower that slightly?" You would just take the auxiliary knob I have highlighted and turn that to the left a notch or two. Last but not least, if the bass player said, "Hey, I need my bass a little bit louder," you would simply take the knob that I have highlighted and turn it to the right a notch or two. I'm going to try and do a video where I will switch the knobs around, the auxiliary knobs, and I'll let you hear what's coming out auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2, and auxiliary 3. And you'll hear a difference. You'll hear that they are mixed slightly different. Obviously, there's a lot of differences between these two audio boards, but there's also a lot of similarities. The Behringer has a mute button, where on the Soundcraft it's an on-off button. The Behringer has a solo, where the Soundcraft has a pre-fade level. They both can go to the main output or the sub-outs. With the Behringer, you can output to both of them simultaneously, or with the Soundcraft, it's either the main mix or the sub-out. Both the audio boards have dedicated channels as well as grouped channels. The grouped channels on the Behringer audio board are channels 5 through 12. On the Soundcraft audio board, it is channels 13 through 20. Those grouped channels are handy if you're connecting a tape deck or a CD player. Otherwise, I'd prefer to have dedicated channels. Both audio boards have a really nice EQ. Instead of just having high, mid, and low frequencies, both these audio boards have a parametric mid EQ, which allows you to sweep the frequency where you want the mid EQ to be. As some of you can tell, the Behringer audio board has a built-in compressor for the first 4 channels. For some of you, that might be a nice option to have. There's not much to the back side of the Soundcraft audio board. You might notice that the Soundcraft audio board does need a third-party power supply, where the Behringer audio board just needs a generic power cable. That's something that you might want to consider when buying an audio board. You can also see that the Behringer audio board does have the channel inserts for the first 4 channels. The Spirit Folio by Soundcraft also has the channel inserts as well. It allows you to hook up external sound processors. It can be handy. It's a feature that not everybody will need though. As a lot of you can tell, the Behringer audio board does have the USB port, so you can connect it up to a computer. I know I didn't cover all the features of the 2 audio boards you see right now. I will be doing more videos in the not so distant future. I wanted to end this video by stating, I know some of you probably have audio boards with the direct out feature, and I know some of you are thinking, once you take the direct out and connect it to the audio interface, whether it's PreSonus or Mark of the Unicorn, you probably realize that you can use that as a routing system, so you wouldn't need the auxiliary section of the particular Soundcraft audio board that I have right here. That is true. I used to have a Layla 2020, and I know it can be used that way. Some of you are probably thinking, hey, we've got an audio board that has 6 auxiliary outputs on it, and we use it just like you did in this video, but we don't have a direct out. What we do is we use our sub-mix channels to do the multi-track recording. Some of you might be thinking you could use the auxiliary outputs to connect into the audio interface and do multi-track recording that way. That would also work. The last thing I want to say before this video ends is I see people spending $160, maybe even $170 on an audio board, and if they just spent an extra $60, $70, they'd have a much better audio board. Instead of having a knob for the volume, they'd have the faders, plus they'd have mute, solo, and some sub-outs and probably an insert. That's all I want to say before I wrap this up. Don't buy something a little bit too chintzy, but at the same time, don't spend $180 on features you're not going to use.